Alrighty, let's do this. Hold on. One and two. Yes. So, okay, guys, I am, I am here, and I am. Hold on. Let's see. We are getting this together all the way around. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it may be when you are tuning in to this broadcast. I am your international award winning author, filmmaker, and empowerment specialist, Tennille M. Jackson. And I want to welcome you all to an all new Get Educated, Get Empowered with Tennille. And so, wherever you are tuning in from, whether you're watching this on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, or even listening from Noon Vibe, I want to say hello. I want to welcome you guys. And then, as per usual, I want to encourage you to adhere to our rules of protocol. Number one, be sure to say hello so that way I can speak back to you. Number two, be sure to tag somebody that you believe would benefit from watching this broadcast, and then like and share the video. So I should say like and share the video, and then tag somebody that you believe would benefit from this broadcast. And so, who would benefit from today's broadcast? Today we are talking about effective budgeting, right? And we are going beyond the surface of what it seems like we would be talking about. Because again, typically when we think budgeting, we think only in terms of financial. But remember, with Get Educated, Get Empowered, I kind of talk about all things as it pertains to those four topics. So whether we're talking about, yes, entrepreneurship. So we're definitely going to hit the monetary aspect of it, but entrepreneurship, relationships, self-care, and the arts. So we're going to hit that topic in all of those areas, okay? So if you know an entrepreneur, tag them to the podcast. If you know somebody that's struggling within their relationships because maybe it seems like it's lopsided, they're spending more time, more energy, more effort than the other person. Maybe it's you, but maybe it's not you, but you know somebody who it is because you're always listening, you're always the ear, and you're hearing what they typically complain about. Tag them. If you know somebody who's not budgeting properly for themselves, tag that person. And then again, like I say, as it pertains to the arts, so books, movies, music, if you know someone who needs help with or some type of advice in regards to that, get them in here because we will be talking about book budgets as well. So let's talk about effective budgeting. Okay. So first, let's talk about what budgeting is. All right. So I'm going to actually read the definition for you guys about what budgeting is. So that way you understand and we're all on the exact same page. So when we talk about what a budget is an estimate of income and expenditure for a set period of time. Okay. So basically, if we're talking about your household budget, so let's start there. Why don't we? When we're talking about budgets, let's start where everybody thinks we're talking about, which is financial. Okay. So you can use budgets in a variety of ways, but and now I am talking about financial. Many times people think of, when we talk about budgeting, most people only think about like a household budget, right? So if you're talking about your monthly expenses, that's where most people's minds will be. So like I actually was surprised again as a life coach and helping people to get through their day-to-day situations. I was surprised at how many people that don't use a budget, right? I was surprised to learn that there are so many people who kind of wing it. Like, so if I ask, well, what are your monthly expenses? Many times people would say, I don't really know. I mean, because it could vary. Like sometimes, like I know my rent is this much, but sometimes this is how much this bill is. Sometimes this is how much it is. And so for me, there's a direct correlation when you are, whether you want to say you're in debt, or even if you're not in debt, if you are constantly struggling to find $2 or $3 extra, right? But you have no clue where your money is going, there's a direct correlation between the two. So the whole point that I'm making is you want to get to a place where you are able to Be accountable. I think that's the best way to just call a spade a spade. Be accountable, be present in your own financial moments. So, like whether you are the one who creates the budget for your environment, your household, whatever, or not, you should at least be aware of what the budget looks like, right? So you should be aware. So whether this is for your household, whether it's for your business, like you should be aware of what are the things that we need within the household. So when we talk about monthly expenses, many times what we're talking about are, your rent, utilities, light, gas, cable, phone, internet, stuff like that, right? If you got car note, car insurance, life insurance, your groceries. So these are revolving things that every month they're going to come up every single month. So you should have an idea of how much is that, what does that number actually look like. Is the whatever work that I'm doing, so whether it's entrepreneurial work, whether it's your regular paycheck, whether it's unemployment, are the monies that I'm making enough to cover the expenses that I have? Okay. And so, again, the only way that you can answer that question is to have an idea of what the expenses are that you have, right? So, take the time if you haven't already done so. And if you find yourself constantly in the red, if you find yourself constantly struggling, like it ain't even living check to check, like you can't even get to the next check because you done kind of overspent on the first check, right? So if this is where you are, here's a easy, I don't want to say easy because it's going to take a minute. If you're negative, then it's going to take a minute to crawl out the hole, but you can get out the hole, right? So it's going to start with creating a budget for yourself, for your household. What are the things that you do? What are your revolving expenses? You need to have an idea of what those things are. And then that in relation to the amount of money that you bring in, because again, what you will notice is that if you are taking the time to um pay attention, then you can help to get things balanced out, right? So if you're noticing, okay, because for the most part, your rent is going to be the same thing every single month, rent, mortgage, whatever. And then in the summer times, we know your gas bill typically will be lower, your light bill is typically higher, right? Wintertime is the exact opposite. So you need to know what are those bills. And if you see that the amount of bills that you have are more than the income that you're making, then okay, it's time to make a change. Either the quick fix is just bringing more income, but that's not always realistic, right? So the other thing is, how do I supplement the income, or how do I get it balanced? So maybe you do, payment plans. Maybe, do I need cable this month, or do I need to have this month, right? So you just kind of figure out how to bring things in balance. Now let's flip the switch and talk about budgeting in the artistic world, so with the arts, right? So whether you are an author, whether you are a filmmaker, or you are in the performance world, so a singer, musician, whatever, you also need a budget. Why do you all need a budget? Well, you need a budget because, so if I'm trying to get the project up and going, many times most creators, that's the only time that they foresee needing money, right? So if I'm a singer, and if I'm working on a project and I need studio time, okay, well, I know I need money for studio time. So people will incorporate the studio time in their budget, right? If you need an engineer, if you need a producer, so the other people, or even musicians, so depending on the type of project that you have, if you need other people to help get your project created, then that means that you're going to need a budget for, you need a working budget, right? So like if you're a singer, it's great that that you know how to sing, but that just your singing isn't going to get the record created. You need producer, you need an engineer, you need, like I say, whether you're going to have a track, you need somebody to create the track, or if it needs to be live instrumentations, you need musicians. So unless these are people that you just have in your family, or people that you know that don't mind working for you, then that means that you're going to need to know how much will that look, how much is that going to cost you, and you need to be able to prepare that so that way you can get it done. Like that's how come nowadays you see more people doing things more like individual, so like one single. Once upon a time people would drop albums at a time, right? And your more mainstream people still do, but a lot of times when you see independent artists and they're dropping a single at a time, why are they doing that? Because that's what their budget allots them, right? I mean, and sometimes there are other creative elements behind that, right? Sometimes it's not necessarily just that they can't afford to drop one single at a time. Sometimes it's a marketing strategy, right? Like, so I'm trying to get people to know me for this particular project. So I want to put all of my effort, my energy, my money, my resources, whatever, into this particular project. But many times it's because, okay, if say it costs $1,000 to get, maybe you needed five musicians. I don't know. Let's just go with it. So maybe you needed a drummer, a couple guitarists, a pianist, and somebody else. And you had to pay each one of them $200 just to do this one song. That's $1,000 right there. And these numbers are not like, this is not really imaginary. This is really close to like what it actually is. And again, depending on the skill set of your musician, depending on how long you need the musicians, like it can be even more than that. Like people charge, two, three, $400 an hour. And again, depending on how skilled the musicians are, could be even more. Same thing with your producer, same thing with your engineer. So it just really depends on the quality of the project that you want. But watch this, just because now the single is created, that doesn't mean that your expenses are done. And let me pause right there so that way I can bring the other two creative processes or industries into the same conversation. So it's just the same like with a filmmaker. A lot of times when you're putting the movie together, right, and I don't care what genre it is, when you're putting it together, there's typically going to be some type of budget associated with it, right? So whether when you're putting it together, the budget is, you need your actors, the budget could be getting your locations, the budget could be your craft services, meaning you got to pay people. So like there's so many different things and different reasons why you may need a budget, the props that you need, right? So there is money that it takes that you have to put into the project just for it to get made. So you need to have a budget for that. The same thing with my authors. Like, yeah, you may be writing the book and it don't cost you anything to write the book, but you need to pay an editor. If you're going to get a graphic designer, so say if you're trying to be a little bit different than every other person who's going to use one of the templates, like if you want to be a little bit more original, then it costs money to do that. So the point is, with all of those books, movies, and music, there is a budget needed just to get the project going. And for the most part, many people foresee that cost. They may not know exactly how expensive it's going to be, but they understand that there is a cost associated with doing that. However, where the ball gets dropped is when they don't foresee after the project is done, right? So now the book is written, but nobody knows about it. So you still need to have a release party. The song is, dropped, but you need to have a launch party. The movie is created, but you need to have a premiere, right? Like there needs to be events connected to the completion of your work. And typically, that's going to also be another cost, right? And the reason why I say it needs to be an event that's connected to it, because the whole point is you're trying to find a way to get people to know about it. So you shouldn't be waiting until the project is done before you start promoting it. But in the event that you do, whenever you're ready for the world to know about it, that's a cost. So whether it's you're trying to buy books, whether it's you got to rent out your space, whether it's, like there are things that's cost associated with creating the event. Then let's say you say, well, you know what? I don't need an event. I don't have to have an event. I'll just go live on social media and tell people that my stuff is done. Okay, that's great. But guess what? At a point, you're going to need to market yourself. And again, whether you are an author, an artist, or filmmaker, like you have to market yourself. So whether that marketing looks like ads, promotions, whether that marketing looks like attending events, if you want to be a vendor, if you want to, be a speaker, like whatever the capacity is, many times you are, for the exception of speaker, like I guess there are some events where you have to pay to be a speaker, but in general, when you're going as to an event, typically you're not paying to be a speaker typically. But again, there are exceptions to every rule. But if you're going because you want to be a vendor, you want to be able to sell your product, you want to be able to get that exposure, there are costs associated with that. So therefore, you too need to have a budget. So where is your money going to come from? Like if you spent so much money, if the only monies that you thought about came from just so if the only thing that you said I need to set money aside for is the actual creation of the project, then what's going to happen? You're going to be in a whole lot of trouble when now the project is out and you broke. You didn't set money aside to actually do anything else. You didn't set money aside because you had thought about the fact that, I'm actually going to need more than just the money to get the project out. Now that the project is ready, I want to be able to connect it with other people. I want my film to be in film festivals. That's a cost. I want my book to be in book contests. That's a cost. I want my song to be in this contest. That's a cost, right? So I won't say everything, but there are a lot of things that you can do to try to get exposure for your finished product that you need monies for. Yes, there are some things that's free 99, but there are many things that you're going to need money for. And in that case, you need to have a budget set aside. Now, let's get done with the financial and talk about like budgeting our time, right? So, a lot of times, what ends up happening is we expend too much of our time on one particular thing, one particular person. So that's a great time to kind of talk about this in the context of relationships, right? Like many times, and it doesn't just have to be romantic relationships, it can be friendships, it can be whatever. There are times when we don't let people know up front, this is my capacity, right? So whether we want to talk about this from the realm of self-care or relationships, it works for both. When you are entering into a relationship, and again, does not just have to be romantic. If you just started a new job, that's a relationship, right? These are business relationships with your coworkers, with your boss, what have you. If you just started a new church, if you just started a new hobby, so you're doing some stuff within the community, you need to let it be known up front. This is what I am able to do. You need to let it be known. I have, so if you're volunteering, I'm able to volunteer an hour a day, or I can volunteer 10 hours a month, or whatever it is. You need to be aware of what your schedule looks like. You need to be aware of what your free time, what your availability looks like, because what ends up happening is if you are not aware of how much free time you have, you know what ends up happening? You end up double booking yourself. It happens all the time. And now you're frustrated because you're like, oh my God, I forgot I had this done, or I forgot I told this person yes, or I forgot that I was supposed to be doing this, that, or third, right? So you need to be proactive in understanding what your time capacity is. And many times, people don't do that. Many times we're not using calendars, we're not using our phones other than to just either play games or call people with. So it's like you have to use tools that help to keep you organized. And so that way you can kind of know, okay, this is what I'm allotting for excess time this week. Once that is to capacity, then guess what? Everybody else gets to know. So if you know, okay, there are a couple different ways you can do this. Either it's 24 hours in a day. This is how these hours are already allotted. And so, this is how much time I have left for today. You can either do it every day, or you can just say generically, this is how much time that I want to. So I know that it shouldn't be a problem to donate 10 hours of time and whatever the capacity to whomever. So then start monitoring those hours. So if you know without it being a problem that you can donate 10 hours, then keep a watch of those hours. So okay, I promise such and such that I'll do this, and that's gonna be an hour and a half. Okay, now you only got 8.5 hours left. Okay, I told such and such I would do this. This is another 2 hours. Okay, so now you only got 6.5 hours left. You see where I'm going with it? So once you have given out the time that you know that you have available, don't keep going. This is when you tell people, if the 10 hours is what you have for the month, once them 10 hours is gone, I can help you next month. I can't do nothing else. Because now what's going to happen? If you already did the work to figure out that all you have available is 10 extra hours, so that then means once you start going into hours 11, 12, 13, and so on, now that's somebody who you got to take from, even if the somebody is you, right? Because those other hours are already allotted for, it's already accounted for. So you have to be mindful of how you are using your time. Okay. So again, that's really, I think, and I've kind of broken it down. So what we're talking about from an entrepreneurial perspective with finances. So as an entrepreneur, as a creative, so author, filmmaker, singer, when we're dealing with money, sit down with yourself and really determine what are the things that I need, what are the expenses that are associated with whatever it is I'm about to embark upon. With your time, you have to do the same thing. You have to take the same type of inventory, but it's not financial, it's with your time. So how much time do I have left this week? That then means that you're going to have to proactively look at your calendar, look at everything that you have going on. How much time do you have? And understand that it is not necessary that every single one of your hours be allotted for or accounted for, right? So it don't mean, okay, well, it is 24 hours. I know that I'm sleeping 6, that leave me 18. I'm working 8, that leave me 10. I got to take this person somewhere, that's 2, so that leave me 8. Like, you don't have to try to fill up all 8, all 24 of your hours in a day. It's okay, and it's actually best to give yourself some extra time. Why? Because now you're going to be able to take some stress off of yourself. Because imagine this, if you are already to capacity, you done already filled up every hour in them 24, something go wrong. You allotted X amount, you allotted 2 hours for this, but then it was a traffic jam and you know it's gonna be a traffic jam. But then the doctor said it's gonna be an extra hour because they running behind. But then the game went into overtime. Like, when you stretch yourself too thin, now what has happened is you are creating extra amounts of stress on yourself unnecessarily, right? So you have to learn how not to put yourself in that predicament. And so, how to do that is we want to make sure that we are aware in advance. We want to make sure that we are aware of how much time we actually have, and don't like put yourself down to the wire. So if you get, 20 hours is accounted for, that's that day. time to go to the next day. So, worst case scenario, if some things go wrong, you still got some hours to pull from. Best case scenario, oh, dog it, I guess you just gonna have to rest. I guess you're gonna have to just kind of take care of yourself for those 4 hours that's not allotted for, right? Or accounted for. So, I want you guys to, again, whatever resources that you have access to, whether it's your time, your money, your energy, always be proactive and understanding where you stand with all of that stuff, making sure that you see, okay, this is how much I have, or this is how much is necessary, and do that proactively. By doing that proactively, you will save yourself a lot of time, a lot of stress, and a lot of tears. You can thank me later. But anyway, guys, that is today's show. Don't forget, if you would like to be a sponsor of Get Educated, Get Empowered with Tennille, you can reach out to me. That is, those packages will be available, readily available, starting next week. I'll start putting those, for those of you who are watching me from a visible platform, I will start highlighting those at the end of the show, so that way you can see it. For those of you who are listening to me via Facebook, if you want to send stars my way, you can feel free to do that. YouTube, I believe, is the super chat or whatever that is. But for everybody else, just continue to send some love my way, send some applause my way. That's fine. At the end of the day, my whole thing is just to help somebody to get educated and get empowered. Thank you all so much. And until next time, you all stay inspired.